It's Swedenborg Live. How's everybody doing? Thank you for showing up. My name is Curtis Childs, and I'll be your host. We're going to talk about some stuff, and I got my friends with me. Everyone, do you want to say a quick hello?
Hello, I'm Karen Childs, Community Care Manager and writer at Off the Left Eye. Welcome. So glad to have you here.
And I'm Cara Dom, the Latin consultant around here and a member of the community care team. Great to have you.
And I'm Chelsea Odner.
I
do lots of things.
Everybody already knows who Chelsea is. Hey, everyone. We're so glad you're here. If you're joining the show for the first time in the YouTube chat, ask a question. And we spend all hour long answering those questions to the best of our ability and thinking about what it could mean for all of us. And while you're getting your questions in, I'm going to get us in the right mindset. So I'm going to give our spiritual thought for the day. We're beginning our show with, this is a thought that was featured in a couple of our programs this week, so you may already be familiar, but it's still worth pausing and contemplating. It's a quote from Swedenborg, of course. One is not to think about truth that comes from anywhere but the Lord. Okay. So now we've just been reminded there's such a thing as truth, there's such a thing as the Lord, and there's such a thing as thinking. So let's do all those. And that quote is from Secrets of Heaven 8,867. So for today's fundraising goal, $88.67. You thought it was going to be $8,000. If we can raise, we're a not-for-profit. So all we can do, the only way we can do any of this stuff is your very kind, generous contributions. If during this show, there happens to be a total of $88.67 and not a penny less contributed, we'll do an extra 15 minutes of Q&A as a token thanks from us to you for making all this possible. Thanks so much for considering. Go to offtheLeftEye.com/donate. That's where your journey begins. Okay, let's get into the questions. First, the question we gave to you this week, which was, what do you think it means to follow truth that comes from the Lord? Yeah, what is that in the first place? Because I didn't get it right away. And you can see me on Chasing Swedenborg kind of unpack that. But Karen, what did the people think about that?
We got a lot of responses to this one, and many of them nice and long. They're wonderful. I encourage everybody to go to social media and read them in full. So we just took a sentence or two out of many of them. Couldn't fit them all, but just wanted to represent as many as we could. So here are some of them. To follow the voice of good in whatever it is you're doing. Yes. I think it's to be able to trust and follow one's intuition and heart. Mm-hmm. It means detect, enter, stay in it, and spread it. For me, it means, is there love and wisdom in it? Yes. To do the right thing, even when it seems like it will be impossible or unpopular. I think it's love. The truth from the Lord is love. Do everything with love. To me, it's to follow your gut instinct because the truth is in your stomach. I felt only this I can do. Often I knew I could do it better. I want to be a better person. To follow the words and teaching of Jesus as he is the source of all things. Go to the word so that God can nourish and heal your life with goodness. Find and follow his doctrine in the Bible and to obey the commandments. As vessels of divine love, being guided by the wisdom proper to that love. Wisdom is the ability to discern goodness from evil. With truth comes trust, for God is not slack in his promises. Promote peace, love, mercy, goodness. Seek guidance from the Lord. Surrender to the Lord's love that dwells within us. Let this love, by intention, manifest into our lives through our thoughts, words, and deeds. Live from this truth outward. Truth is the love of God. He watches over and guides us in the right direction. Truth from the Lord is in plain sight and always comes with loving insight. It is the truth spoken directly to our hearts and conscience. We can be bombarded with lies and may be misled by them for a while, but the truth will always prevail eventually. The only way to follow divine truth is through divine gifts, such as intuition. And finally, we can only really know God, it seems to me, through love. So that's just a few excerpts. Go read the full things for a greater context, but it was great. I loved reading through all your insights. Thank you.
Man, nobody was fazed by it. I thought people would say, what are you even talking about? What does that mean? People are ready. They know what it means. They're ready to apply it in their lives. Thanks, everybody. That's cool to see it. And boiled down to such succinct little pieces of life wisdom. That's high end. Our own Chelsea, you already know her from the intro. You took it a step further in the podcast, right?
Yeah. So this week's podcast is called Seeing the Face of God, and when Swedenborg first went viral. And that's one of the hats I wear as I host the Inside Off the Left Eye podcast. And I had fun, riffing on the kinds of things that Curtis brought up in the Chasing Swedenborg this week, and took it in the direction of making a meditation about it, like a 10-minute meditation that you can listen to, that is that sort of, how do you connect into that truth, to that, the source of truth as the Lord inside of yourself when you're, faced with any kind of confusion and everything. So it's, and longing for clarity. So I hope you enjoy that. And then we do all the usual things we do in the podcast. So it's a fun time, and you can listen when it comes out on Sunday.
All right. Sounds awesome. Let's get to some questions. And remember, as we ask these questions, if you donate them, what's that? Oh, we already hit our goal.
Oh.
Then we should go for the 8,000, right?
Thank you, David. David made a generous contribution that by itself put us over the hump. We are at 100, up over 88.67. So thank you so much. We'll be doing an extra 15 minutes. It doesn't mean the rest of you can't pile on there, because really every dollar still does go into our programming. Feel free to. Let's go for that 8,000, people. Let's do it. Thanks so much, David. All right, let's do it. First question is from Jet. Jet asks, Swedenborg often talks about the well-being of the other. I have done that all my life and often forgot myself because of it. How do you see that relationship? That's good. That's a good question, because it's not necessarily a very new or sharp idea to say, just think about other people, because it don't always work. Are we supposed to run ourselves into the ground? Are we supposed to always give everyone else what they want? Help me out. What do you think, Chelsea?
Yeah, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is that Chasing Swedenborg you did a couple of weeks ago about usefulness, that the Lord created the universe so that usefulness could exist, because centering it on usefulness rather than, I don't know, kind of like the people involved, or is it this person or that person, or how many people can I help, or can I only help just one person? If it's about the usefulness of anything you're doing, then that is a good, compass, because then oftentimes, the usefulness starts with ourselves in terms of, there's just a great quote in Secrets of Heaven 5,000 something. I did talk about it in the podcast from that week about, we have to take care of our body for the sake of the uses that it can perform, for the sake of our soul. So like part of our self-care is our body, is our soul. There's a real emphasis on taking the usefulness of taking care of yourself so that you can show up in integrity with other people. And, I've even thought about it for myself, because that's like, it can become a codependency thing, where you're just way too much focused on other people. And it ends up being a place where evil spirits can really attack us, because it can confuse us about what's really important in a relationship. And there is meant to be that clarity of knowing yourself, knowing what you need, and really any usefulness that we have for other people starts with our own relationship with the Lord. If we're not cultivating that and, tuning into that, then we could just get, who knows where we're going. We don't have the Lord. We don't have that connection with the Lord to help guide us and knowing how best do I show up in any of these, different areas in my life. So anyway, that's thoughts that come to mind for me.
Great, good, and practical. I love it. Any other thoughts? Yeah, Karin.
Oh, Cara, go.
Oh, okay. Well, that the very familiar reference in culture that about the airplane, in the airplane, what do they tell you? Put on your own oxygen mask first and then help the people around you. In other words, you need to be in a state of some kind of stability in order to help other people. And loving yourself is not a bad thing per se. I mean, Swedenborg has this hierarchy: love to God, love to the neighbor, love for the things of the world, and love of self. And it's just about not having you be the only thing that matters to the detriment of everybody else. Mm-hmm. You do matter. And I think some people who take this so much to heart do get kind of messed up about it a little bit. And Swedenborg talks about being over conscientious, that there are people that are so overly conscientious about doing it right and being a good person that they can get themselves in trouble, so to speak. I mean, you know, give themselves some challenges. So as always, it's a balance, and keep being clear on your own boundaries, where you end and where somebody else's begins. There's a lot to it, but it's true. It's a balancing act that everybody has to work out for themselves, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, the airplane thing is just beautiful, because the airplane's not trying to be cutesy and tell you to do. They're telling you this is how we are going to survive an emergency. Is you need to take care of yourself so you can take care of others. So perfect. Karen?
Yeah, perfect. Love what's been said already. I think usefulness is, you know, how you need to help effectively. You have to think of long-term effectiveness. We are supposed to help others, but wisely and effectively. And it's not wise or effective to just wear yourself out and not take care of yourself. And also to remember, you're not the only person that there is to help. Like there's tons and tons of people. So sometimes it's appropriate and useful for you to help in this situation. And sometimes it would be better if somebody else stepped in at that point. And you think of any device you own, or your car or whatever, like, you need to take care of it if it's going to be effective and be able to do what it's meant to do. And that same goes for yourself. You are a precious being who is here to share the love of God, but you need to do it wisely. You need to take care of yourself so that you can be this channel that can work as effectively as possible.
Yeah, it seems to come down to why are we taking care of ourselves? And if the why you're looking after yourself is because you are the thing you love more than anything, and that you think life is about you and everyone else is less important, then that's a problem. But for any other reason, it's good if we're taking care of ourselves to do something. And it's interesting that when Swedenborg talks about loving the neighbor and doing things to help other people, I feel like most commonly he's talking about it rather than, well, I could go, but this person, I'll let them cut in line, because one person to one person. He's more often talking about the common good of society. So that the way that you love the neighbor is to go out and contribute to the public welfare. So he'll say that yes, the stuff that we would consider charity and giving is important, but it's not the foundation. Like the foundation is really more what your occupation or what you do in society. So I think when you frame it that way, that it's not just always, well, somebody else wants what I have in my hand, so I'll give it to them, but more I need to make life better for everyone. That really drives home how important it is to have yourself in tip-top shape. And it's gather wisdom about it too. I've been learning just how important it is to take care of yourself on all these different levels. You need joy, and you need to recharge, and you need to be able to relax at times, or else you're going to break down. So it's like really respecting the tool of God that you are, and making sure you take good care of it, like Carmen was saying. Great question. Let's go to another great question, because Colin Vickers asks, I seem to recall that Swedenborg warned a time or two in his writings against entertaining fantasies. Can you help me understand what he's referring to and what the danger is? And I feel like I first want to think about, like, Cara, do you know what word that is translated fantasies sometimes, or what are the other renderings of it? Because I certainly picture that, but I don't know if that's only in the older translations or what. Yeah, you got to unmute, but yeah, what do you got?
Yes, well, interestingly, the Latin word is fantasia, which is why it gets turned into fantasy right away. And I don't have a clear idea of what newer translations have done with that. I'll see if I can find out.
Okay, great. Karin, yeah, what do you have a thought on the question?
Well, I'm being reminded, and I wonder if this is what Colin is referring to. Sometimes Swedenborg talks about, okay, maybe you're not acting out to do physical violence to someone, or physically commit adultery, or physically go steal somebody's stuff. But if you indulge in those fantasies purposefully, like indulge in the enjoyment of doing harmful stuff, and what that it's just whatever pleasures we indulge in kind of grow, become part of our spirit more and more, and it's harder and harder to separate from those. And I think what Swedenborg is warning about is if you fantasize about doing harmful things a lot, it's going to become more and more part of you, because pleasure is the food for our spirit. And it will become hard for you not to just act that out in the afterlife. Because if it becomes more and more like, I'm not going to do this physically just because I'll get in trouble, or like that's not morally acceptable, and becomes the only reason because you're getting such pleasure, then that's going to become problematic and harder to get untangled from in the afterlife. So that's what's coming to mind for me when I remember Swedenborg talking about fantasies and warnings. So I wonder if that's what Colin is referring to.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great warning. And this is often a reason that he gives for the existence of the life that we're in right now, the physical life, because you have a filter. Your body isn't as reactive to your will and understanding as your spirit is. So you can get, I'm going to say something really obnoxious, but no, I probably shouldn't say that before your lips move. So did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that Swedenborg emphasizes that this isn't talking about things that just pop into your mind or flow into your mind. This is more getting in the habit of willingly indulging, in a big way, a very purposeful way, in fantasizing about doing things that are harmful. That would be harmful, that are about betraying and hurting and, and greed and things like that. So it's not just the stuff that, flows in and you find yourself like, whoa, what am I thinking about? It's like purposeful and habitual.
Right. Yep. And it seems like at times he's referring to delusions as fantasies. He'll talk about everyone in hell has fantasies, but it's really a misinterpretation of like a false belief about the way things are or what's right and acceptable. So sometimes the danger of these fantasies is that it leads you to a life of evil because you believe inaccurate things. You're either intentionally to justify wrong actions or just because you don't care about the truth. It just leads you away from the heavenly lifestyle and makes it very hard for you to be helped, because fantasies, these delusions, reject the truth. So yeah, that's another thought on it. Did you research anything?
Yeah, well, in a very quick look, and I couldn't get at the Latin on this search engine, but one translator rendered it as just imagination, things that you imagine about. It's sort of, yep. It's a different flavor, but it gives you another perspective.
Right. Gotta protect against those kids programs that say use your imagination. The problem, no,
It's entertaining.
I'm just kidding, everyone. That's not. It's a different use of the word imagination. Okay, yeah, Chelsea.
Yeah, well, I know I don't. This thought that's coming to my mind. I can't think of a. I'm trying to think of where in Swedenborg have I heard things that go along these lines, and the first thing that came to my mind was being really struck when we were working on our show on I think spirits and addiction, and that kind of I forget the title of that show, but and this quote that is in Swedenborg's Spiritual Experiences, and I was able to find it so I could just share it quick.
Yeah,
it's Spiritual Experiences 2176, where he's writing, by much experience within several years, I have been taught that one should not resolve to do anything that is really unimportant. So, okay, interesting. This is also unpublished. For the reason that one thereby not only loses one's freedom, but also gives spirits an opportunity to desire it and thus to persuade. For it is the nature of spirits to desire intensely and then to persuade regarding some matter as if it were a most definite cause and should by all means be done. And so that idea, I think, resonates with if we get caught up in these ideas, this fantasy of oh, I should do this thing and I'm going to go, and we can get so sort of, it's an interesting process of discerning when is it coming from our relationship with the Lord, or when is it us getting a little too caught up in some idea of what should happen that may or may not be the Lord's will, so that it's always going back to what's the Lord's will for me and for this, and so just kind of having that self-reflection of so that's not quite the same thing as entertaining fantasies, I think, but if that resonates, then maybe that is along those lines.
Well, I love that quote. So anytime we can bring it up, that's legit. And it's really key when he says resolve to do something unimportant. So it's not that you can't go, I'm going to go do something unimportant, but when you say I've got to do this thing, and I bet by unimportant, he's talking about that from a celestial perspective, that it's important to resolve to shun evils. It's important to resolve to follow God and love the neighbor. These things we're talking about. But as far as me saying, well, I've got to get this color shirt, or even I've got to take my career in this direction or something. I think a lot of that we would think, oh no, that's important. That falls under unimportant, because you don't know if in providence, it's a temporal thing anyway, that there's eternal stuff which has to do with the soul, and that's the stuff you can resolve to do, but don't get fanatical about it.
That's definitely why I feel in my day-to-day, that's a tool I use a lot, is am I, I'm not going to resolve to get a certain number of things done today, because I know that's the kind of entertaining fantasy, it's that expectations thing. But if I know I can have an intention, and then I'm going to put it in the Lord's hands, and then life is going to happen. So there can be, but that doesn't mean, it doesn't mean I'm not efforting or I have goals, because there's that whole beautiful, connection of the Lord works through our desires for good and to do great, fun, creative things and stuff. So it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a definite character. I don't know if Swedenborg ever said this, but I'm going to get these things done today, if the Lord wills it. I'm going to try all day to do these things. Looks like I got none of them done. Okay. Yeah. Or I got 3 of them done instead of 12. Okay, well, it wasn't the Lord's will. That's a little different than I'm going to resolve to stop bad behavior X, or following the Lord or something. Oh, I didn't do it. I really got to try. But that other stuff. Anyway, let's just have a whole show talking about that quote.
I know.
Come on. Okay, great question, Colin. Thank you. The Cube. Oh, before we go there, Shelly. Thank you, Shelly. Shelly gave a donation.
Yay.
We're up to 125. We're way above our goal, and let's maybe we could double it or something like that. Thank you so much. And this is letting us do what we do. If you're just joining us, offtheleft.com/donate, you will help this not-for-profit run and make content. The Cube asks, is it good to lead a life devoted to faith, charity, and mutual love? And if so, how do you make it exciting? Look at these questions this week, and this is good. People are on. Yeah. So I think it's something that's on a lot of people's minds. Isn't there this general, then cry with the saints, sinners are much more fun. It's a cultural idea that it's a boring lifestyle, the lifestyle of faith, charity, and mutual love. So what do we do about that, Karin?
I just watched this wonderful short video that one of our viewers shared with me. John shared with me that was so cool because it was envisioning a future that was so exciting if we could just all drop our divisiveness and work together. And it was like opening up all these. It was a good kind of imagining about all the technology that could, the exciting new discoveries, the incredible, just the excitement of like everybody not being slogging through poverty and lack and a thing, and that just there'd be so many more people available to do things and discover things and to have cooperative efforts. And so I think that humanity has gotten so bogged down close to hell for so long, and hell wants us to think, oh, it's got to have explosions, it's got to have bad guys, it's got to have all this thing. And we've just been conditioned for a long time to think that's more entertaining than goodness. But really, we've been so held back. I just feel like if we could shed this lower ego stuff collectively, and you do find too personally, like when you're young, you think, oh, grown-up stuff is boring, but because you're looking for more flashy excitement. But as you get there, you find this deeper joy, and it is exciting, and the things you can discover and your relationships. And so I think that we do have to believe in the excitement of goodness, because Swedenborg says, like, just heaven is far from static. It is just like so exciting. In one passage I remember, he's saying every moment is something new. So think of the excitement of discovery when lower ego stops holding you under this little cloud and there's all this space up here. I or nobody could say, how does that operate in your life? But just to trust in that, like, evil wants to be enticing and thinking you could only have fun if you, and I remember Peter Rhodes talking about the process of coming out of alcoholism. Like when you're in it, it's just like, oh, just to be, home with your family. That's so boring. Let's be at the bar and drinking and everything. And as he came out of that alcoholism and found the pleasure and the joy in being with his family, his friends who are still alcoholic trying to pull him back, say, no, this is exciting. But he knows, like, that is not worth it. That is such destructive and temporal and self-centered. So you have to just trust and go on this journey of turning away from the negative, the temporal, the limited, the self-focused, and it's going to unfold. Like nobody could tell you what that is going to be like for you, but I think you just got to trust in it and go that path, and it's going to unfold.
I want that future that you're talking about. Nothing that is evil is actually exciting when you understand what it is. You can think, oh, it's kind of exciting when there's a giant hurricane, but when you're in one, or your house gets wrecked, or you get harmed by a storm, you can't have fun thinking about hurricanes anymore, because it's not fun. It's just, oh, no, don't do it. I don't want anyone to get in the path. That the more that the stuff that seemed exciting, that's from hell. It just only ignorance makes it exciting. So if you want something there's nothing more exciting than when what you really want is something that's allowable and that everybody else wants. It's just like, oh, positive feedback loop. Okay. But other thoughts on that?
Oh, go ahead, Cara.
Okay. Well, I'm an old lady now, and I think the most exciting thing there is peace. It just, a lack of inner turmoil. That's the most exciting thing. And also just on my own take is that the most exciting frontier to be discovered is the human psyche. I mean, and the human spirit. If you're not interested in finding out who the people around you are, try finding out who you are. That is pretty exciting discovery. Not always fun, but exciting.
Nice.
Nice. And I was just going to say that Off the Left Eye is exciting.
Hey, that's right. It's funny because Off the Left Eye is awesome. And I always joke around, like, when I'm trying to self-deprecate what I do for my job, I say, oh, I make religious videos for a living. But actually, no, I wouldn't want to be making videos about something else. This is my favorite thing to make videos about.
Yeah. That's right. We have lots of fun. So faith, charity, mutual love, lots of fun. Super
Go team. Woo-woo.
Yeah, that's right. Faith is the affection of truth. So you think about how much harm falsity causes and how obnoxious it is when somebody's not looking for the truth. To love the truth, I mean, there's nothing more elegant than that. Charity is, if you've been on the receiving end of charity, of somebody helping you, there's nothing better than it. When you need it and it's given, there's nothing that's more white hot, electrically great than that. Amen. And then mutual love, that is what life is. Like when you get in there and you love someone and they love you, okay, it's exciting. And I will close by saying, I'm way ahead on the becoming an old person scale, because I already, all I want to do is go to like little nature preserves that have that like brown sign, and like I'll go there with my wife, and it's like us and everybody else is got 45 years ahead of us, and that's exactly where I want to be. I don't want anything exciting. Okay.
I want to just quick add that even it's pandemic time, so it's not the time people can travel around and off, but there's so much wonderful stuff to discover just like it on this planet. Like I've just moved to a new area and just loving just exploring the area and the houses and meeting a new person who runs this store. And it's just like, there's so much to discover all the time, and life is full of excitement that's positive.
When you're talking about, think of all the things we could do if we were all work together. I think travel should be a human right. Everybody should be allowed to see as much of this earth as they can. You hear about people that are born in neighborhoods where there's a high prevalence of poverty, often don't even ever leave their neighborhood, or like a few blocks radius from where they are. It should be like a human right that everybody gets to see a bunch of the world. If we all work together, you could do that. You could make it so that everyone can afford to get places and everyone can get to experience like what it's like to snorkel with tropical fish, or what it's like to see giant mountains, or what it's like that would be an exciting world.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Okay, let's go forward.
Work together.
Yeah. John asks, does Swedenborg explain why everyone is assigned spirit guides or a spirit guide while they are on Earth? And was there a time when people weren't assigned them? I think we have a pretty good answer to this, Karin.
In our show called The Angels and Evil Spirits with Us, we talked about how in the beginning, when humanity was innocent and new, and there was just a direct connection with God, that's where you got your guidance. Like it was a direct connection. They were in a very innocent state, just willing to be led directly by the Lord. And then as humanity got more and more sort of enamored with this idea of independence and materialism and fell away from that, the only way God could reach us was through angels and then spirits. We have this diagram in the show, so I will encourage you to go watch it. But this whole network of that, where the Lord guides us through spirits, was an add-on to how it used to be, because now that's the only way God can reach us until we get regenerated again. And so we have to have these angel guides and spirit guides so that God's energy and thoughts and feelings can get down to us, and they get altered as they go down through the network. But that is the only way. And so we do need these spirits and angels assigned to us, basically, and that would have to do with there's a similarity in thought and feeling, because that's the way God's guidance can come through the network, get to us, and start us, get us started on that journey, taking the steps. And as we go on the regeneration journey, doing the repentance, recognizing negativity, turning away from it, we get connected with better and better quality spirit guides, as we're moving along and upward in our spiritual community, and getting more in touch with our angel guides, who are always there, but we'll get more clear with their guidance. So there was, from what I understand, there was a time where it wasn't needed, all this network of spirits to guide us. It is necessary now, and that's why. But we are on a constant journey of change where we can be getting better and better quality guidance from the spiritual realm.
I knew we had a good answer. Let's say thanks to Karin for that. And then say thanks to Tina. Tina made a contribution. Thank you so much. We are well above our goal, but we could get weller above our goal. Go to youtube.com/offtheLeftEye, and you can make the next round of programming possible. Thank you so much for supporting our not-for-profit venture. Shall we go to the next question? This is from Matthew Bush, our friend Matthew Bush, who asks, Swedenborg says, without remains, we can't be regenerated. Are there any who are without, from a bad upbringing? For the uninitiated, the remains or the remnant is a little storehouse of goodness and truth deep inside of us that Swedenborg asserts gets put there by the Lord through our states of childhood and early adolescence. And that's something the Lord draws on to regenerate us, as he says in there. But maybe people don't have very good, innocent upbringings. I mean, there's a lot of people in really bad situations. Does anybody lose out on having remains? What do you think, Cara?
I don't have an answer for this, but it's a big question in my heart too. Years ago, I saw one of these magazine TV shows that did a little piece on neglected children. And that was the thought that came to me, is they're missing the remains they need. But I don't think that can possibly be true. I mean, I think the Lord will find a way to plant these states of good and truth in anybody. I imagine it's harder. And I imagine that's why, for instance, neglected children go on to have a very hard time in life. But I don't know. I don't know the answer. I just am resonating with the question.
Yeah, right, because it tugs at our basic sense of fairness, but also there's just kind of this little panic. Wait, is anyone taking care of these little kids?
Right.
Karin.
Yes, Swedenborg learned that absolutely everybody has this set of remains. And I think it's important to remember that they're not only established from outward situations, but also from the angels that are with every infant and every child, regardless of their outer circumstances. So I think that's how it's guaranteed that everyone gets these remains implanted, even if they have a bad outer situation. And a bad outer situation might indeed make it harder for their outward life going through earthly life, but there's an untouched part of their spirit that the Lord guards and protects and makes sure that does not mean they have any impediment to getting to heaven. And we did our show, Life Isn't Fair, or Is It? To talk about things like that anything that somebody is deprived of in this life for no fault of their own will be provided in heaven. And so it's a guarantee that everybody has that, and regardless. And I have heard amazing stories. I think that from the outside, we can always look at people's lives who had very childhoods and think, how can that ever work? But I have heard amazing stories from people who had a horrendous childhood, and yet they themselves can say what sustained them. That was the presence of God. And so, for instance, one woman was saying she just even could remember during abuse, she felt something else holding her, like holding a part of her that was God, that was the Lord. Like, so even in the moment, she was able to feel a protection of some part of her. And I've heard, other similar things. So I think absolutely, we only see things from an earthly point of view. And so it's hard for us to think, how is this fair, and how can this work out when a person had such bad tools given to them from the beginning. But remember, that's outer. Our inner is forever. Our inner is what's real. The outer is temporary. And absolutely, the Lord is so intent on making sure we have that remains, that's why, okay, a little geekiness here, that the most ancient church, the innocent age, where people just, God's will flowed right into their will and then into action. And when that stage era of people started to corrupt their own wills, and they didn't have a filter, like a intellect that could think, like have some perspective on their will, their remains were almost going to get destroyed. And therefore God had to do a big reset and change the whole mechanism of the human mind and how we regenerate, so that we have this, these remains, and then we can, but we can have a separation, like an intellect that can learn differently than our will, than what we were taught. So you can think of, like, children were taught a certain corrupted way of life, but it's possible for them to learn something different later and make different choices. So that kind of thing. So it's so important that God did an entire last judgment and reset on the human race when the remains were almost disappearing. And God will never allow that precious tool is not inside every single person.
Great. Absolutely. I mean, of course, if God was willing to, if that just got a little bit in danger, and so we have to go through this drastic action, it's not just happening in willy-nilly around now. I want to bring up, so Swedenborg Foundation that we work for here has an arch nemesis in the UK called the Swedenborg Society. Just kidding. We love them very much, and they do a lot of great stuff, including they had published a version of Secrets of Heaven or Arcana Celestia. And I was reading this the other night, and there's a line here that I think it relates to where we brought this question. So this is in 5897 at the end. It's talking about how when you do something good and true and stuff, it links angels to what's inside of you. So the angels then go away, but since that link has been established, they can be brought back anytime. Okay. And then it says, but this linking does not take place any more often or fully than the Lord pleases, who controls the situation as is entirely best for that person's life. So that last line there, as is entirely best for that person's life.
Yeah.
That just hit me as, wow, that is really tailored to you, even to the point where how often you need to connect with these particular angels is so precision controlled, because the goal is what's best for your life. So with that level of care, there's no way that God is not going to be making sure that it's not going to have somebody's circumstance destroy their chance to get into heaven, right? So,
yeah.
Okay, let's go forward. Thanks, Matthew Bush. Flower Child is next, who asks, religion is an intimate part of life. Many abuse the reason of religion to get away with their evil ways. What is, present company excluded, what is Swedenborg's opinion of fake preachers? And this is a great question, because fake preachers were like Swedenborg's greatest nemesis in some ways. So let's have at him. What's he say about that? Yeah, Karen.
Started. Absolutely. He says that's a terrible thing. And it is represented by intense stories in the Bible, like the Tower of Babel and the Cain and Abel, and just the whole process of when faith, religion, which is a God-given thing as a way that God speaks to people on earth. And, through religion, as it was supposed to be, it's a way that teachings can come to people, guidance, common mutual cooperation and help of each other, like that's what it's supposed to be. And it was terrible corruption when people took that framework that we call religion and used it for self-centered purposes. And that was the huge abomination of desolation that Jesus talked about and predicted, that when his teachings would be taken as a whole and then corrupted and used for selfish purposes by preachers who had self-centered agendas. And that was so drastic that it needed a whole last judgment to sort that out. So it's very drastic, because the more precious something is to begin with, the more terrible it is when it's misused and perverted and used badly, because it's in itself, it's something that people are wired to trust and to turn to. And when you turn that into something harmful, it's like if you pretend as a person, you pretended to be somebody kind, and then you just hurt somebody because they trusted you. It's just a terrible thing. So that's what Swedenborg would say about fake preachers. It's a very terrible thing to use religion for self-centered and greedy purposes. It's drastic in spiritual terms, a drastic perversion.
Yeah, Jesus wasn't too keen on it either. The only people he really ever let loose on were the Pharisees. It seems like that you've made, this is meant to be a house of God, you made it a den of thieves or something close to that. Mm-hmm. Any other memorable interactions that Swedenborg had around this topic, Cara or Chelsea?
I think he just very often refers to the clergy and the educated as people to look out for, because they're not always learning the holy stuff for the right reasons. So he's very critical of that, of the people that have their own gain as the goal for being in those kinds of positions. So.
Yeah, and to remember the historical context at Swedenborg's time, it was huge. Like religion was totally enmeshed in the government of countries, and church leaders had tremendous power over people's lives. And Swedenborg was seeing a time when the corruption was really bad, and he was seeing it both on earth and in the spiritual world. So he was talking a lot about it because it was huge then. Yeah.
I know that he often gives an example, not of a real person, but a theoretical preacher who, when they get up in the pulpit while they're talking and just really getting into it, they can almost believe what they're saying, but because their life is ruled by love of self and love of the world, as soon as they step down from there, they don't even think about religious principles and apply them to their lives. So that's a problem as well. Okay, I mean, we'll let him off easy this time, but closing thoughts, Karen?
Yeah, closing thoughts is then to remember and bring it back, because then it can be easy to think, well, religion is evil and, broad brush thing. But remember that it was supposed to be something good and supportive and life-giving, and it is used that way by many people too. And Swedenborg talks a lot about the corruption in the clergy of his day, but then he also gives the examples. But a preacher who from their heart wants to help people and help them be guided and to the Lord, and that's super good, because what religion is supposed to be is a group way to help one another get in a relationship with God and help each other. So there's a good version, and we can try to bring that back.
Good. Yeah, good to round that out like that. Okay, there you go. Let's talk about what Robert Martin wants to talk about, which is this. If everything here on earth is a reflection or correspondence of what is going on in heaven, I love to read these like, if you say this, then that, but they're not really like that. What do you think the COVID-19 could be in heaven? What about all the evil actions over the past year? We have a little thing going on right now, y'all may have heard of, called the global pandemic, the once in a century disease. And do we have any sense of how, you couldn't have something this big happening here without the spiritual world somehow, being in that chain of events. So what's it all about? Karin?
We did do a show a while back that had COVID-19 in the title. I can't remember what the rest of the title is, but Jonathan did present, some thoughts about maybe what the disease corresponds to. And I think Swedenborg always says, the causes of everything are in the spiritual world, but I think we have to be very cautious about trying to make a one-to-one, because what it can lead to is blame. Like, I have to watch out for this, because you hear that in the world, this natural disaster or this disease came along because those people are doing this, and judgment. And the point is never supposed to be that. The point is always look in our own hearts. And so it could be useful to speculate what this particular disease corresponds to, but we'd have to look at it in a universal way, like something each of us can work on in our heart, not certain actions that certain people did and in this certain year, because anything that's erupts in big ways has been building up over a long time. So just want to say that, and I think Jonathan was sort of speculating about what might a disease be that affects the lungs in this way and this and that. But so some spiritual cause, yes, but let's watch out for trying to pick out who did something bad to make this happen.
Yeah, and I was thinking, in light of that sort of that, I think we talked about it in our show, how spirits are connected to your health, is this interesting line between what's happening physically and what, there's always a spiritual association or connection that's happening, but because of the way it can indirectly be manifesting in our lives, it's not necessarily that one-to-one that Karin was saying, then there really is this element of free choice that's always at play, which is that we can choose to make it something that we want to reflect on from a spiritual place. So if I'm having a physical symptom, I can just deal with it, but I could take the opportunity to reflect on, it might be a little flashpoint for me to think about something spiritual, and it might end up leading to really fruitful spiritual insight. Like the Lord can flow into that and use whatever's going on physically to help forward you in your spiritual growth. And so in very general terms, the global pandemic is a correspondence, or you could say what it is a spiritual crisis, sort of like what Swedenborg calls a temptation. If it's collectively things are getting really hard and we can't ignore that we're a global community, and that we have to work with each other somehow, and people have different ideas about things and everything. And so, how to work together better, Swedenborg says, heaven is all about uniting things and hell is all about dividing things in a negative way. Heaven is really great at appreciating differences, but hell really wants to divide things and make them hate each other. And so this global pandemic is an opportunity for us, the Lord says, Swedenborg says that only the Lord can see heaven as the full single human being that it is. Anybody who's in heaven only gets to have their one little vantage point, and maybe has a sense of how they're a part of this bigger thing called their community or something. And so I think we know that we're a part of this big thing that's happening globally, but what does it mean for each of us is, we can all engage with it with how it leads us to reflect on ourselves in our own spiritual growth. and know that when we're doing that, we're doing our part, and can think about it in those bigger picture terms.
Yeah, I love it. And how's that vision of us all working together looking now? How exciting would it be if we could have all like really got this figured out before we were suffering through all these years with it? It seems to me that, yeah, there's the virus, and the virus is a problem, but this problem was made so much worse by everything that Chelsea was alluding to, that the division and just the fact that it caught us off guard because we hadn't taken seriously this getting this global sense of community, even within countries, the sense of community, efficient systems to move and do things. We wouldn't have been neglecting that. We'd all been going around and doing whatever low self thought was fun. Instead of that would have been more fun. Wouldn't have been more fun than not having a pandemic. Just like with your health, it's, I don't really want to eat this healthy food right now. But when you don't get sick or when you don't get a heart attack, then you're really glad. So, okay. Karin?
Oh, I was going to say, just jumping off of what Chelsea was talking about. Yeah, I think whenever crisis hits in our own individual lives or collectively, what the Lord would want, how the Lord brings it out, good out of it, is how can we work together? How can we work together to help one another through this? Because that's where heaven comes in. And that's the good that can come out of a crisis, whether it's a little personal one or a big collective one.
Yeah, and I do think that was the one other thought I was having along the lines was like, there is sort of these spiritual principles around the cycles that we go through in our spiritual growth, and like getting attuned to that in yourself, then that like if you're, feeling really despairing or having like intense, negative thoughts and feelings or something, it can be a nice, it's helpful to recognize like, oh, this is this point in a sort of spiritual growth cycle. Like I know the Lord is leading me in some way to have goodness and truth get bonded to each other in a new way through this process, for like, it's an opportunity for whatever these negative things that are in me to be coming to the surface, for me to be addressing or learning how to hold things in love in a new way, or whatever the Lord is leading us on. And so that just gives me some hope that we can collectively use this sort of collective crisis to, participate in a way that helps the Lord bring the good out of it that the Lord can foresee that we maybe have a hard time envisioning.
Yeah, amidst all the hassle and pain and death in this pandemic, I have loved all the stories of the creative ways people were finding to help each other and support each other in this very difficult time. And that's what's going to last long after this pandemic is finished.
Evils have to be seen before they can be removed. I think that there's a part of me that didn't really, everybody kind of hates each other and despises each other, but once something like this comes along where we really suffer from not being able to get on the same page, it makes you realize, that's a problem. We got to fix that. So it's in that way, it's identifying these sort of larger human problems that we got to sort out, because you can just say that's not a problem until you understand why it is a problem. So
yeah,
thanks very much for that question. Let's do another one. We got time, and this will take us into our bonus time. So I want to say thank you very much to Dave, Shelley, and Tina, who have made this segment possible.
Woohoo!
We will begin with Young at Heart, our friend, who asks, what are the panel's views on spiritual or holy places? Are some places on earth more favored than others to help us connect with the spiritual world? Yeah, what's up with that? Karin, go ahead.
The first thing that popped to my mind is Swedenborg said that in the Bronze Era age of humanity, when there was not a lot of thinking and feeling that was heavenly going on, it was very sort of lots of wars and lots of very down here, that particular like physical places and structures, like the Israelites were told to make this very particular tabernacle and ark, and those were all super important in that area of humanity, because it needed the correspondence. Like there was a stronger need for specific physical correspondences to keep a connection between earth and heaven when there wasn't a whole lot of heavenly level thinking and feeling going on. And so you've got the Holy Land, Israel, having these locations that were very important. And, you know, in other religions too, that there's places that it was important to do religion and things. And so I'm thinking that, you know, then time went on and Jesus came and was reteaching people about the inner life, not just the outer life. And all religions got a little, you know, started thinking more deeply. And I think, so I'm thinking maybe it's less important than it was to be in a particular place on earth to connect meaningfully with heaven. But at the same time, you know yourself that when you go to a beautiful setting and it stirs your heart, that there's something happening there. So yeah, it doesn't seem to me that you would have to be in a particular place on the globe to have a you know, a more or less effective connection with heaven. But anywhere on earth there would be exterior situations that can correspond and draw your mind into heavenly thoughts. So those are some first thoughts that came to me.
Yeah, it's true. There's these, think of it from a going and exploring nature standpoint. Because remember I talked about, I like to go with all the old people and watch nature. There's these grand, amazing ecosystems. You can go to Yellowstone or the Everglades or whatever, wherever you're lucky enough to go. And it's really great and beautiful, but you, in a little puddle in the grass, you can find this amazing joy and beauty there. Yes. As well. And I think Swedenborg gives an interesting commentary on, well, it depends on what you mean by connect with the spiritual world, but talks about the area, the biblical area of the world. So land of Canaan, Egypt, that area. Actually, the reason those events took place there was at that time, those places corresponded to these spiritual realities. So the events happening in those places somehow created this link with heaven. It doesn't mean that if you went to those places, you would be more spiritual, or even if you were featured in those stories, you'd be more spiritual, but somehow those were connecting with the spiritual world. And Swedenborg said that in his day, mid 1700s, there were places in Europe that had the same correspondences. He talks about countries in Europe having the same equivalent meaning as Egyptians did in biblical narrative. So I don't know what it is today. So it does seem like there actually can be places, not that you're going to step in there, or because of this phenomenon he's describing, not that you would step in there and feel different, but it is this is where the plug is for the spiritual world. And I don't know if it's place or people or what, but yeah, Chelsea.
Yeah, I just think about what Swedenborg says about the Lord's presence, and that, you know, the Lord is omnipresent, but there actually is a way where the Lord can be more present, and that depends on our receptivity and our intentions, I think. And it going back before the age that Karin was talking about, you know, like the most ancient church Swedenborg describes as, you know, understanding correspondences at play in the natural world around them. And so they would go up on a mountain to, you know, worship or something, or go to certain trees because of that sense of that, because there was both things going on at play. There was that physical element, but they understood what the spiritual import of it was, the correspondence. And so I think some of that's probably still at play. And I really wonder, I just think there's got to be something going on So two thoughts are coming to my mind. One is I love kind of testing, sounds bad, but like testing the Lord. Like I remember being, a young mom with little kids and feeling just like, where is God in my life? Just super overwhelmed with things and just feeling like this little 3 by 3 foot space that I have has to be, sacred and potential enough to connect with God. Like God's got to be here and do something amazing, for me, or else, come through on your promises, sort of a thing. So that's some of the most beautiful things is when God works in places where you least expect it. And you find God in where you wouldn't, expect, or you might think that's not a holy place, maybe it's the most holy place. But then on the other side of that, I do think there's this way, like when you walk into a space, it can feel different. There's like an energy to it. So I think there's something real about our intentions, the way we use a space, like there's something real, and with whatever the spiritual substance is and however that spiritual substance finds its grounding in the physical world, that's true. I just think that there's something going on there. So it's like, certain spaces in the woods or on a mountain or whatever. So interesting that both can be at play, and I don't know, we can do stuff with both of those sort of ends of the spectrum.
That's always how it is in Swedenborg. I feel like there's truth to both sides of it, and I love the way you laid it out there. I'm glad you brought up that point of the people that go up in the mountains and worship there. It seems like every nature documentary I watch, I'm sorry that I can't stop talking about this. It says, the indigenous people here considered this a holy mountain. Well, you think they just did that for no reason? Everywhere, there's all these sacred mountains and areas. I'm sure it's because people were having some kind of spiritual experiences, or it was really having some kind of impact. You don't just consider something sacred for no reason. So most likely there's quite a lot. It seems like every culture has sites that were near it that were considered holy. So it's probably there's a bunch of sacred places around. I don't know if it's intrinsic to the mountain itself or a particular connection with those people as they live there. Probably a combination. There's probably a really complex, real mechanism that makes it like that. But I'm sure that there's no reason that people think this is a sacred mountain or a sacred river, probably because it's from experience. So cool. That was a great question. Let's do another one. Hey, we got another bonus question. This is Nana Rosebud, who asks, do people that are baptized really get favored into the spiritual world? I read that in a state of shock, because we're just about to release a show about this. What? It's coming right up. It's the next show. Okay, do we give away some? I guess we've got to. The people bought this segment. We've got to give away some of the answers. Chelsea, what do you think?
Oh my. Okay, so do people that are baptized really get favored into the spirit world? Well, watch our show. Not this next week, but the following week on Monday, March 15th, I want to say, maybe.
It's all the same.
It's all the same. And
Thursday.
So no. Talk about the both and what we were just talking about of like what makes a sacred space holy is there's how and why do rituals work? That's sort of the bigger question that we ask in baptism, and what we talk about is how much it comes down to our intention and the intention that we bring to a ritual that we're participating in. And so in the case of baptism, it's not baptism itself is just this picture of the whole longer process of regeneration that we go on. So it's a reflection of that, and it's a symbol of our commitment on that journey. And so there is some real power in that. It sort of creates some spiritual connection, like but it's really the beginning of a journey. And so it can be really helpful on your own personal journey, but it's not required. And And so there isn't exactly that kind of favoring, I think, but sort of if you think about it broadly, if it's helping you, or it can because it's leading you on your beginning your journey of regeneration, of this spiritual growth. So it can be a symbol of that. But it's not sort of a one-to-one, you do this earthly act, you get this spiritual result. But there's some interesting things to explore in that.
And explore them we will. Not this Monday, but next Monday. Let's do, because we're about to release a show on this, let's go to one more question before the show here ends today. This is from Gavin O'Malley, who asks, do you guys see the earth ever being restored to the original condition when the ancient church was here? We've mentioned this ancient and most ancient church several times. What do you think? I'll start. And if we're just going to continue my theme of talking about nature, this will be the last time I get an opportunity to do it. So I was walking the other day and I was thinking about the state that nature currently exists in, because I do think that the biosphere, the intact biosphere before we had degraded it, is a picture of maybe the human mind as it was in sort of the Garden of Eden state. And right now it's all fragmented, and I was thinking about things like introduced species, where you have an animal that comes from one part of the world to another part of the world, but that part of the world isn't ready for that animal, so it takes over. Here in Pennsylvania, we just had this thing called the spotted lanternfly come in, which in just like a year or two is like everywhere now and is wreaking havoc on everything. Spotted or cane toads in Australia, this sort of thing. There's also all the domestication we've done. We've totally changed what nature is. But if we stopped, nature would totally restore itself. Meaning, sure, the trajectory has changed, but as soon as we stop transporting things around and changing and messing with things, things would start evolving again, so that you'd end up with distinct continents, each with their own distinct species, and you'd have biodiversity. The system invariably moves back to this state. So I would wonder if there's a similar mechanism for humanity, that we, as soon as we stop doing things that are pulling against that state, we'll just ease into it. Might take time, but it's inevitable. So that's my first thought on it. Karin?
Yes, I absolutely believe in a coming golden age. And I think it's the last chapter in Swedenborg's book, True Christianity, that's about the new church, what he means by the new church, and that it is represented by the Holy City at the end of the Bible, and imagery and other religions. We did the spiritual future of the human race, so go watch that show. But yes, it's a coming back to a connection with God. And if you think of it in terms of, because I think Swedenborg does compare it in that chapter in True Christianity to, think of the growth of one individual human being from the innocence of their babyhood and childhood, and then sort of the turmoil of adolescence as you're feeling more independent, want to do things your own way, but then you have your hard knocks, and then you move into adulthood, and you actually are coming back to something, but in a new way. And so the end goal is what Swedenborg calls this innocence of wisdom. So it's not the same as the innocence of childhood and infancy, where you just didn't have any other choice. You didn't know anything else than trusting your creator or your parent, whoever it was at the time. There is going to be a coming back, but it's going to be a freely chosen coming back. And that's why free will is so important. And it leaves room for all this chaos and going on wrong paths and things, as the human race has done. But in the end, we can collectively choose with intention, because, we're choosing it. It's not just the default, but we're choosing to go back to a relationship with God and to be led by God. And that is going to bring about, this peaceful state on earth again, like there was early on, but it will have been our choice. And so it will last. Like Swedenborg in that chapter says, this church will not end, because it's going to have been chosen with intention. So that's what I get out of True Christianity, the final chapter.
Sounds like a really hopeful note if we were to end on that note, which the clock says we have to. Thanks, everybody. I feel great. I feel like I have absorbed a lot of great information. I see more questions in the queue, and I'm like, let's just do another. But we'll do them next time. We'll if you didn't get your question answered, post it here in the comments. And our awesome community care team, led by Karin and Kara and a lot of people that you know, will come in and chat with you about it. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to our donors. We had 3 donors for a total of $145. So that's very exciting, and it's going to let us do what we do. So thank you so much for believing in us and taking it upon yourselves to make this possible. And next week is a development week, so we won't be putting out shows. We'll be hard at work making them. In the next week after that, you'll see the efforts of our labor, including our next show, Does Baptism Matter? Yes, we really are doing a show about, we knew people wanted to know about that, so we're doing that. Hey, thanks panel. That was really fun getting to talk to you.
Thank you, everybody. It was a delight. Love your questions. Love the thoughts and discussion that they raise, and so fun to think about this all with you. And don't forget about the podcast this Sunday. Somebody tell about that, right?
Yeah, Chelsea mentioned it before, but just in case anyone didn't hear, it's called Seeing the Face of God and When Swedenborg First Went Viral. And that's this Sunday, which is not that far away.
Thanks, everybody. I wish you all a happy weekend. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, it's so great to get to be here and get to learn along with you all.
Bye, everybody. See you later. Be safe. Watch more videos. See ya.
Be in nature.